All right, hey everybody. In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to write files so that we will be able to get our information and we can store it so that even if we shut off our EV3s, we can still retrieve that information. So for example, I have made a very simple voting system right here. Just if I press the left button, it goes up to 8 and 9. And let's say I want to keep track of this, but I can't have my brick on at all times. And I just shut it off like that. It's gone. Now if I restart the project, it is still there at 9. And there are many different applications to this, from tracking things with sensors to calibrating like your lines and everything for different lights. But I'm just going to show you the simple voting one here today. So I am going to get started here, and I'm going to make a new program, and I will call this one file. And to use the file block, we are just going to go to the advanced settings right here, and all of our stuff with the file is going to be done through this file access block right here. And there are 4 different parameters that we can work with, and we will work with all of them today. They are all pretty essential. So the first thing you want to take care of is you want to write the file name. If you do not have a file name, it will not work. So for this one, I will call this one voting, because I call my other one vote. So I'll just call that one voting. And now every time I am accessing this file from anywhere, I need to refer to voting, the file name. And so there are 4 different options. There's read, write, delete, and close. First thing we're just going to do is write. If you do not have a file in there and you try to read it, so let's say I want to read this voting file and I try to do it. Oh man, you get that horrible sound because it tries to read that file, but there's nothing there. So first thing we need to do is write it. And you can put your little input data wire into there, or you could just, I'm going to write 4. Now if I do that, we'll go very quickly, but it should be there. And so now it has just written this file right there. So now if I go down here into my little tab and I go to open memory browser, I can check all of the files that are in here. So inside of tutorial, I have all of these things right here, but if I go to voting right there, I can upload it to my computer. So if I go to desktop, save, and now if I go to desktop and I find voting, it opens it up in a rich text format, and you can see this little text thing right here is, it just says 4, just like I wrote it. And now if I were to write something else, say I write 8, it does it very quickly. And I can do the same thing, go back here. I can voting, upload it. I wish I could just open it normally, but I can't. And I'm going to replace that file. Boom. And you can see that if I open it, now it has 4 and 8, and it will keep on writing. Now, this next thing here that we have is read, and we'll get into it a bit more with a bit more detail later. But read will always read the top line of the file. So if you were to, for the one that we just had, since 4 was the first one, it will read 4. If you were to read several times, it will, like if you were to do read here and then do another one, then read again, but you were to do voting, this would read 4 and this would read 8. So first line, second line, and it will keep on going down. So we could also delete the file, and we can close the file. I'll just show you delete right here. If we were to delete voting, and go into there. Now if we try to find it, it is no longer there because it was deleted. So let's see about how we can make this simple little voting system here. I am going to use a variable And we will have it. I'll just set up the voting system first, and then we'll show how we can use files in order to write it. So first thing I want to do is I want to display this variable. It's going to be a numeric variable. And I will add a variable and call it votes. So I have my variable right there, and I just want to read it, make sure that this is wired, and I want to make sure it's on image and text, and plug it. Oh, I gotta do it again. Wired, and plug it right into there. And now if I loop that, I want to put that in there. And just for an example, I will write this to, let's say, 5. Oops. And nothing will happen because I misnamed my variable. Whoops, I don't want to add that either. And let's do votes here. And now if I do it, you can see that that is 5 because I declare my variable 5, and now it is always reading it. But that doesn't really help us out very much. So let's see how we could actually have a voting system in here. We want to add a switch and switch it to tab just because it's easier to see. And we want to have if, we will have the left brick button. If the left brick button is pressed, do a little math here. We want to read that variable. We want to read votes. And we want to take that number. Go in there, man. And we just want to add it to 1. And then we want to change votes to be that. So set variable. Write that to votes. Okay, and then because if we just do it like this now, it will go up really, really quickly. So we want to add a little wait block at the end. And I waited 1 second. Let's wait 0.5 seconds. Let's make it a little shorter. So now it will always display this, but if I press the left button, which is indicated up here, it will take votes, add 1, and then change votes to whatever the value was plus 1, and then it will wait for 0.5 seconds, and it will go back into displaying it. So let's try this here, make sure it works. Okay, so it starts up at 0. Then if I press that, it goes up. Now, my problem is if I get rid of it and I press it again, it goes right back to 0. And if you're trying to do a voting system, like that's no good at all. It just forgets all of your progress. So let's see how we can add our write file into this program so that it saves. First thing we always want to do if we're using a file is we want to write it. So I'm going to do voting. And we just need to write something in here. And remember, it will always go down to the next line, and reading will always go to the top. So it won't replace what you have in there. It will make sure that there is a file called voting. If there's not a file called voting, it'll just write a blank line there because I didn't write anything, or I could put 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever. But we need to make sure that there's a file there, or once we try to read it, everything will just go haywire. So once we have found our file or written it, we need to read from that file. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to read, and because we're dealing with a numeric variable, I am going to choose read. Since it is numeric, I will click numeric and make sure. I've been burned many times by not putting the file up here. It automatically defaults to ABC, so make sure you change it, or else it won't work very well. So now we want to read that file, and all we want to do is write the file to the variable. Boom. So let's change that to votes. So now it will make sure that there is a file there. It will write something. If there already exists a file, it will write to the bottom line. Then read will go to the top line. And it will take that file and it will take votes. It will say, hey, votes, this is from the file, so change whatever you are. You're going to be 0 since we just started the program. But because we know this file is here, you are going to become the top line of that file now. And now let's go into here. So now votes already knows what it is from being over here and reading from the file. So votes says, hey, screen, display whatever I am right here. And because I know I'm the file, you do that. So now, if it is pressed, we are going to change votes. But what we need to do now is make sure that if it is pressed, it changes not only the votes of the variable, which is up here, but it also changes the file. Whew. All right. So the first thing we want to do is, because it's always going to read at the top of the file, we just want to take whatever is inside of that file and delete it. So we're starting anew. So let's delete the file, delete votes. And because if we just kept on writing, it would go to the bottom, to the bottom, to the bottom, to the bottom. And figuring out how to get it to read down way at the bottom would be pretty tricky and not something that we want to deal with. So when we delete it here, it just gets rid of everything. And we already have votes in the variable, so we will be able to write something completely new to it. So we get rid of the file. And now we need to figure out what votes is now and then write to it. So after we have changed it, which is right here, and we have changed votes, so we figured out what it was before, we added 1 to it, and then we changed it right here. Now let's take votes, so let's read it. We're going to read the numeric variable votes, and then we are just going to write that to the file. So let's write, and there's no option for text or numeric for there, so you just always do write. It's pretty simple. It's nice. Change the votes and then just write it right in there. So whatever the new value of votes will be, it's going to write it to that now blank file because we deleted it. So let's say it was 7. The only line now in that file is going to be 7. So that, let's say we just got rid of it now. When we came back here, they would write a blank line on the bottom, but 7 would be on top. So then when it goes to read it, it goes to the top file, and that is going to be 7. But then when it comes in here to change, it gets rid of that 7 and that blank line, and it starts completely anew, and then writes it again. So the final thing we need to do is, if we are writing a file, this isn't terribly intuitive, but we need to close the file as well. So after we're done writing it, if you do not, this isn't like some trivial sort of ending block like this. Like this, it will not work if you don't close it correctly. It will not work if you name it incorrectly, like I just did. So if after you are done writing it, you need to make sure that you close the file so that when you go back to read it, it's not being like it has been properly closed. Okay, so if you want to read it again, you need to close it after you are done writing it. So we have our final program right here. Let's just double check this to make sure that it works. So I have 0. Let's go up. Good, good. All right, let's stop that. Let's play it again. Oh, it starts at 0. I did something wrong. What did I do? All right, so let's walk through this here. All right. So see, this is where you can go wrong. Here I have voting, and here I have votes. That's not what you want. So let's keep this the same. That should be voting. And that should be voting. Not voting. Voting, and finally voting. All right, that should work. Voting, voting. I've messed up these file names several times, so make sure you're keeping track of that. It's 0, 1, 2, 3. Stop the program. Try it again. And it starts at 3. Perfect. And we could do this all day if we wanted to. Where is this one? Tutorial. File. Boom, 6, 7. Perfect. So that is the basics of files. You could use it for many different things. Anytime you want to save information for a longer period of time than what variables really allow for. Join us for our next tutorial where we'll talk about data logging and taking some of this data that we have been, or taking some of this information that we are taking in here, but really kind of making it so that it is nice to look at it, and you can do just track a lot of different forms of various information, and it should be useful and fun. So stay tuned for that one, but thanks for watching this and have a good one. Later.